Stay tuned for one of the most unusual and fascinating hours you'll ever hear. The subject is UFOs. Welcome to the ParaNet UFO Continuum, a one-hour program dedicated to a very strange phenomena, unidentified flying objects. Whether or not you believe UFOs exist, the controversy is real, and this program will try to get to the bottom of it. Your host is Michael Corbin, Director of ParaNet Information Services, a global communications network based near Denver, Colorado, dedicated to the investigation of UFOs. We invite you to keep an open mind as we discuss one of the most fascinating and strange subjects in the world. Here's your host, Michael Corbin.
And tonight is July 17th. We're one day after the big impact of the first piece of debris to hit Jupiter. And of course, we're still here. So we're moving along. And that's the theme of the show tonight. We're going to talk about the planet Jupiter and the Shoemaker-Levy 9 comet, among other things, with an astronomer. And first, we're going to take a couple of news pieces, and then we've got Chris O'Brien down in the mysterious San Luis Valley, who is going to give us an update. I understand that there has been a considerable amount of activity since our last update. July 31st is a day that you'll want to maybe mark down on your calendar, because that's the day that the long-awaited movie Roswell will air on Showtime. It's an original Showtime movie starring Kyle MacLachlan, Kim Greist, Dwight Yoakam, and it says here, an intelligence officer searches for the real truth behind mysterious crash debris found in 1947. He believes that it came from a down-flying saucer with the crew aboard. And of course, this movie is taken after the book The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell by Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt, something we're looking very much forward to. Several weeks ago, we reported the news about Congressman Schiff making the inquiry with the GAO concerning the crash at Roswell, as long as we're talking about that subject. And what we've got tonight to talk about is apparently Phil Klass, in his infamous style, has apparently found out that the information that Schiff was after had to do with a Project Mogul. I'm going to read this to you. It's an article that came out in Phil Klass's newsletter, the Skeptics UFO newsletter. Independent investigations by two UFO researchers in the U.S. Air Force have discovered what crashed 75 miles north of Roswell, leaving behind unusual debris found by rancher Mac Brazel on June 14, 1947. It was a balloon-borne radar corner reflector that was part of the then top-secret Project Mogul, designed to use giant, high-flying balloons to detect Soviet nuclear explosions. The first ufologist to discover the Project Mogul Roswell debris connection was Robert G. Todd, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, a respected, sharp-eyed researcher whose efforts focus on using the Freedom of Information Act to obtain once classified documents. More recently, ufologist Carl Flock also discovered the Roswell Project Mogul connection. It will be reported in Flock's 170-page report on his investigation of the Roswell incident, to be published soon by the Fund for UFO Research. Flock is married to Mary Martinek, a senior member of the staff of New Mexico Congressman Steve Schiff, who triggered the current General Accounting Office investigation into the Roswell incident. Flock recently told a friend, quote, "I'm firmly convinced that something from Project Mogul was involved in the Roswell incident," end quote. The United States Air Force, which has launched an extensive investigation in response to a GAO request, also recently discovered the Project Mogul Roswell connection. As part of the United States Air Force's research effort, it has conducted an electronic search of several million pages of documents at the Air Force Historical Research Agency archives without finding a single mention of the Roswell incident or of a UFO or ET bodies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's all I'm going to read of that. But in this typical fashion, I want to say that it stinks to high heaven, and I don't think it was Project Mogul after all. We're going to carry probably more on this in a future edition of the program. Okay, let's move on to Chris O'Brien and talk about the update at the mysterious San Luis Valley in southern Colorado. Chris, good evening.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I'm on the road in the middle of an investigation here at the Great Sand Dunes Oasis right outside of the monument.
Okay, and
I've just been informed of another sighting that happened on July 3rd. I hadn't had any reports of any activity on that night, but evidently there was. And just to summarize briefly, the first 2 weeks of July here had me hopping. I was getting phone calls and visits from people who claimed to have seen, unusual lights and satellites that appeared to be going backwards and forwards very quickly, and fireballs have again been seen. As some of your listeners might know, we had a rash of large fireballs come into the San Luis Valley in December, in January, and evidently they're back. We've had 3 large fireballs reported in the first 2 weeks of July, so things have really heated up again, contrary to what I see as patterns from the past here. Usually this is our dead time when events don't normally occur, but evidently it's coming fast and furious.
Yeah, it is quite a contrast from the last update we got.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on any cattle deaths, mysterious cattle deaths?
Well, I might have mentioned to your listeners that I do have a case from June 1st that I'm still investigating. I haven't heard of any concrete confirmed cases. The chief cattle inspector in the northern New Mexico area mentioned a couple of cases from Dadle, which is further south towards Roswell, and also a case in the Black Lakes region, which is further north. Other than that, nothing that I personally investigated or had any hard confirmation on. I am working with a film crew who's here in the San Luis Valley from Sightings, which is a Paramount television program that they've taken off the air last year or this season, and plan to put back into syndication next year, and this fall, rather. And we are going to go in depth into the mysterious cattle deaths that have been occurring around here and elsewhere around the country in a segment that'll be aired this coming fall.
Oh, it'll be something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has there been any kind of update on the cattle death that was reported up in Adams County, up around the Denver area, or what is it, northeast of Denver?
Yes, that was the one that occurred June 1st.
Okay.
The vet was convinced that it was either a lightning strike or the animal was hit by a car. I know a little bit about this stuff, and it'd be kind of hard for me to confuse a case of one against the case of the other. The rancher is convinced that there was something unusual about the animal death. The tail was cut off, and the hair was removed from the tail and laid out next to the body, but it looked like it had been carefully combed, which doesn't sound like coyotes or your normal scavenger action to me. The animal did appear to have a lack of body fluids. It wasn't completely drained. Of course, your general, mutilation, quote-unquote, type incisions were present. The bag was gone. The sexual organs had been, expertly excised. The mandible was bleached and exposed. The tongue was removed, and it was missing, I believe, one of the eyes. I'm in the field. I don't have my notes. I've talked to the rancher since then. He hasn't heard of any other cases in his area, or he, personally has not had any additional cases. And I'm still waiting for a little bit more information on this one. Evidently, he did hear of some reports of some activity earlier in the spring, and I'm, of course, in my diligent way, trying to chase down these rumors, which do tend to sometimes turn out to be the real thing. So, other than that, I haven't gotten any more information. Unfortunately, I found out about it too late to obtain forensic samples to have tested. But evidently, our cattle surgeons are still at work in the Rocky Mountains.
Well, listen, give out your mailing address so our listeners can know how to get in contact with you.
Okay. I publish a newsletter called the Mysterious Valley Report that comes out bi-monthly, and if you'd like to have some more information about it, my address is P.O. Box 223, Crestone, Crestone, Colorado, 81131.
Okay, Chris. Thank you very much.
Very
Stay out
good.
there,
and hopefully I'll have some a little bit more concrete information about our cattle deaths next week, and I'll give everybody a brief synopsis of how the sighting shoot went.
Okay, great.
Very good, Michael.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris. Bye. Okay, when we come back from our break, we'll be introducing our guest tonight, Jim Moravec. He is an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. We're going to talk about, among everything else, we're going to talk about the cometary impact on Jupiter and some other things related to that. So stay tuned. When we come back, we'll get with the program and we'll continue. This is Michael Corbin, and you're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum.
The ParaNet UFO Continuum is pleased to offer a number of exciting products. Now available are cassette tapes of previous shows, available for $8 each, or 2 for $12, or 4 for $20. You can also order MyCap and ParaNet BBS memberships, subscriptions to Continuum, ParaNet's quarterly newsletter, as well as the UT1 UFO Tracker Kit, containing everything you need when you come across something unusual in the sky. ParaNet and MyCap are also proud to offer a stunning black t-shirt with a background of galaxies, stars, and comets and the ParaNet and MyCap logos, as well as a beautiful blue-green planet Earth. When you order from ParaNet, you're also helping to keep this program on the air. So call now to place an order, or for more information, call 1-800-UFO-NET1. That's 1-800-836-6381. ParaNet, your window on the universe, at 1-800-836-6381.
A lot of people think that to appreciate culture, you've got to enjoy things like this. Or this. In early Mesopotamia, evidence of the first audit exists in the form of lists on clay tablets. Well, a lot of people respond to those things like this. Fabulous. Other people go, is it over? For those of you in the category, you can't expect every cultural activity to appeal to everybody. That's why 23,000 arts and humanities groups called the National Cultural Alliance are offering you something everybody likes. A choice! For a free brochure about what's going on in your community, just call 800-NCA-8888. A little redundant? That's okay. And then you could get excited about something like this. Oh, yes. William Tellito. The arts and humanities. There's something in it for you. The National Cultural Alliance and the Ad Council invite you to explore what's available in your community. Just call 800-NCA-8888.
You're listening to one of the most unusual programs you'll ever hear. It's the ParaNet UFO Continuum, and it deals with one of the most fascinating subjects around. Once again, here's your host, the Director of ParaNet Information Services, Michael Corbin.
And we continue on the ParaNet UFO Continuum. Our number is 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. My guest tonight is in studio. He is an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History and the Gates Planetarium, and he's going to talk to us tonight a little bit about Jupiter and Shoemaker-Levy 9, among other things. And I want to welcome him. His name is Jim Moravec. Good evening, Jim.
Hi, good evening, Mike.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, the big question everybody's been curious about is, since, of course, some of the conspiracy theorists or some people have been saying that the comet was going to impact Jupiter and it might cause this huge cosmic event. Obviously, we're still here. Tell us what happened yesterday when the first fragment hit the planet's surface.
Does kaboom bring any images to mind?
Yeah?
Yeah, especially for the Jovian people up there. No.
By the way, we had an article last weekend about Evanston extending a welcome to the Jupiterians.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually what happened was some of our theories actually panned out, and our hypotheses about what would happen when a large comet strikes a gaseous planet such as Jupiter. And what we actually saw was a fireball approximately 1,200 miles in diameter, which radiating from central United States would cover pretty much almost into Nevada back to Kentucky and northern United States to the southern United States. So it's a pretty large area. That was just a fireball, and it spread from there. And so we're really excited about the fact that we did get to see something going on up there.
And there's also understood that the plume itself went like 600 miles away from actually upper outer atmosphere. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. Well, you have to understand that this impact is similar, and we're just drawing numbers as a general idea, but if you can imagine 200,000 megaton.
I can't.
An explosion
That's
such as that.
Staggering.
Yes.
Actually,
is.
the fireball is staggering just to contemplate the size of that.
Right, right. It's something that we wouldn't want to personally witness.
I would imagine not. No. Stand out there in the street. Come on, Buzz, hit me. Yeah. Did the actual... Now, how do they see this? How were they able to see this? Because I understand that this occurred on the backside of Jupiter where we could not see it with our telescopes on Earth. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Mike. But what we do is we watch the residue, or we watch the result of the impact. And I don't know as of yet. Things have been wild and woolly over here in Denver, but in the science community. But we had 3 satellites, major satellites in observation. One is the Hubble, orbiting the Earth. The other, Galileo, on its way to Jupiter. And the other was Voyager 2, which is out beyond the solar system, which was still in a perfect position to detect whatever it is it could detect from the impact. We also have watching and listening posts all over the planet itself. And so as we, in one part of the world, can see one bit of data, maybe 2 hours later when we can't see anything, another part of the Earth will be able to pick up something. And then what we do eventually is we put all of that data together to get some kind of an idea, some kind of a story.
Mm-hmm. From what that...
Right.
So is there anything about this that comes back like a motion picture, or are these just still shots that like the Hubble is taking?
Actually, we have still shots, and we have video or motion, but not just optical, okay, where we can see what's going on, but we have radio telescopes actually listening to Jupiter itself.
So you're picking up the electromagnetic emissions from this as well, right?
Right, the radio energy, the RF energy, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the thing that the piece that hit yesterday, the first piece,
right?
This is not the biggie. Is there a biggie? There's supposed to be a...
There's supposed to be a biggie, and my understanding is that will come somewhere around midweek. And I was told that it might be particle G, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
We've got so much stuff that we're working on that, and we have to watch. But these are just guesses right now. But we think we're pretty well in tune with the idea right now that midweek is when we're going to have a real nice big one.
So that one is going to make quite a spectacular light show, I would imagine.
Well, we hope so. If this little one that struck yesterday was so beautiful,
the biggie is going to be...
The biggie may be just even
biggie
better,
is
which
better.
is awesome. You bet. You bet.
Now, what is the atmosphere of Jupiter composed of?
The atmosphere of Jupiter composed of hydrogen at the upper levels and down into the lower levels where we have what we believe to be metallic hydrogen. And then we have ammonia crystals high in the atmosphere at about, we believe, minus 206 degrees Fahrenheit. And below that, we have methane, and what we hope we can find is maybe some sulfur, red phosphorus, and other chemicals.
Okay, now the reaction from the impact of the comet, the pieces of it,
mm-hmm.
What causes this fireball? What is the action that takes place?
Well, it's similar to riding a skateboard very quickly down the a sidewalk, very fast, falling off and sliding, okay, mm-hmm. along that sidewalk. Your skin will get very hot, very abused.
Scream for the Bactine.
Yes, scream for the Bactine. And this is the similar thing. you've got particles of the comet which happen to be your body, let's say, hitting the atmosphere, which is the sidewalk. You have intense friction, but there's a lot of heat, a lot of compression that goes on. And this was exciting to us that we didn't know what would happen to the chemicals in a comet reacting with the chemicals in an atmosphere with this kind of compression and this kind of friction.
So we're getting a good first-hand
Oh,
look.
absolutely. We're going to be able to write history here. And everybody around the world is experiencing history for the first time, what we believe in recorded human history. And maybe in all of human history. This may not have ever occurred on another planet.
It's interesting. Very interesting. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we want to talk a little bit about the possibility of something like that happening here on the Earth.
Okay.
I know that's a big question in everybody's mind. 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. My guest is Jim Moravec. He's an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. Give us a call. He's the guy to ask. He's an expert. He knows what he's talking about. So we'll be back in just a moment. This is the ParaNet UFO Continuum, and I'm Michael Corbin. Stay tight.
Astronomically sensational. That's what you'll say when you see the catalog of outstanding space-related games, books, globes, posters, photos, videotapes, computer software, and CD-ROMs from Cosmic Productions. Explore the wonders of the universe with Epic 2000, a Windows program featuring an advanced planetarium with thousands of stars that lets you generate your own star maps and even control a remote telescope. Or try the Redshift CD-ROM for Macs or Windows, a fabulous simulation package that can let you navigate the Moon, Mars, or Earth with stunning realism. You'll feel like you're there. And there's much, much more. For an 18-page catalog, send $2 to Cosmic Productions, Box 1489, New Waverly, Texas, 77358. Cosmic Productions, your cosmic connection, at Box 1489, New Waverly, Texas, 77358. Or call area 409-291-7441.
Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Larry. Good weekend.
Oh, very nice. I went to a little party for Smokey Bear.
No kidding.
Yeah, he's turning 50 this year.
Son of a gun, the big 5-0.
Yeah, nice party, too. The wives made a big cake, 50 candles.
Whose house?
Well, actually, we all put on party hats, ran out into the woods, and hid behind some trees, Ted.
Don't tell me. Smokey walks by, everybody jumps out and yells, surprise!
Oh, you could have knocked him over with a feather.
I'll bet. Tell me, Larry, what kind of gift do you get a 50-year-old bear who teaches people how to prevent forest fires?
Fuzzy slippers.
Of course. Sounds very nice.
Yeah, well, almost perfect. When we brought out the cake and sang Happy Birthday, Smokey made a wish and blew out all the candles.
Yeah, so?
Well, then he poured water on them.
Oh?
Yeah, and then he stirred them with a stick, and then he buried them. Well, hey, you know how it is, Ted. Some guys, they just can't leave work at the office.
Celebrate Smokey's 50th birthday, and remember, only you can prevent forest fires. This message brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Advertising Council.
This is the ParaNet UFO Continuum, a weekly program dedicated to the mysterious and fascinating world of UFOs. If you're interested in learning more about ParaNet, the world's foremost communications network dealing with the UFO phenomena, call us at area 303-429-2654 or write to Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. Once again, here's your host, Michael Corbin.
And we continue. My guest is Jim Moravec. He is an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. Before we continue, I want to mention real quick at the bumper music coming into this break here. ParaNet is now available on America Online. So for those of you out there who are computer literate, you can access ParaNet, the news groups, via America Online's Internet Gateway service, as well as reach anybody by email on ParaNet via this gateway service. So I wanted to mention that to you. If you want further information about that, you can write to me at mcorbin@paranet.org. And that is, again, if you're computer literate, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Jim, we're back. And what I wanted to ask you about this whole event is, what would happen, or could this happen here?
Well, you asked a two-part question. What could happen, then could it happen? Let me ask the second part first. Could it happen?
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Okay. And
most definitely. And what would happen? Well, I guess the best way to answer that would be sell your stock at any price, enjoy the money, fall in love, make it count. Because if this were to happen on Earth, we believe, and of course, again, it's a hypothesis, and that's what's wonderful about astronomy, is that it's lots of hypotheses, lots of puzzle, lots of mystery, but we do believe that with these kind of particles, that it would definitely devastate the planet Earth.
Just from what? Something that size that's already impacted Jupiter?
You bet.
It would cause a major problem.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
In contrast, how large is Jupiter compared to the Earth?
Well, Earth is about approximately, round numbers, 8,000 miles in diameter. And Jupiter is over 89,000 miles in diameter.
So quite a large contrast.
Yes, yes.
Last year, and I think there's been other events like this, but last year there was something that came close, an asteroid that came close to Earth.
Yes.
Now this would be kind of the equivalent of the same thing as if the comet was hitting Jupiter. Is that correct? Would an asteroid even come through here?
Right. In the past several years, we have had some very large objects passing through the solar system, passing close to the Earth and the Moon. And this is quite common simply because we're in motion. And we don't know it, really. I mean, we can read about it in the textbooks. We hear our teachers and our professors tell us that, yes, we're traveling around the sun. We don't really comprehend it until we can actually see the motion occur, as we did last night. We see impact. We see some result of that motion. We're traveling around the sun somewhere between 66 and 68,000 miles an hour. And running into an asteroid is like you running down interstate highway at 65 miles an hour and hitting a bug. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
There's going to be an impact. What's worse is hitting a bird. And in this situation, this is like hitting a bird. Okay? There's going to be some kind of a result with this kind of impact. But yes, those objects are out there in space because we are in motion. And space is not empty. Space is filled with rock and dirt and dust, debris, and very large rock, i.e. meteors, asteroids, things like that.
Now, do we have the capability now to see it coming? Or is the case with the asteroid, as I understand it, we didn't see it till it was practically already here and gone?
Well, now that we've become aware of this, I mean, we've known, the scientific community has known intuitively, wait a minute, yes, we're traveling around the sun, we're traveling through dust and debris and things like this. The import of it never really hit us, pardon the pun, until we saw these large objects. And then it started drawing attention from government agencies and things like this, saying, okay, what do we do? They come to the scientific community and say, hey, can we see these things? Can we detect them? So there's a cadre of scientists out there right now working with agencies trying to say, okay, how can we set up networks to detect these things called NEAs or near-Earth asteroids or whatever? And then the question is, what can we do about it? That's the big question. What do you do about it?
What are they moving toward? Is there something that they can do about it, or is it a big job?
There's a lot of theories that are being pushed around. One is being able to use SDI equipment out there in space, and in other words, turning a satellite around with nukes on it and blasting the thing away, or surface to space nuclear rockets and things like this. But that's out of my area. My area is in the detection and saying, okay, well, here's a rock. It's pretty massive. And if it hits Wisconsin, well, there's going to be cheese floating all over the planet.
A lot of it.
A lot of it.
A lot of it. The question I have when we're talking about Jupiter, what size, in other words, what could happen if something was large enough to impact, say, another planet? Not just Earth, but let's say something large enough came along and hit Jupiter to where it would either cause a tilt in the axis or a disturbance in the orbit. Could something that far away affect the delicate balance of things here?
It has to be real huge. Okay? It has to be gigantic proportions to be able to do something of that nature, because Jupiter is big.
So in essence, these things that are hitting Jupiter right now are just little, these are little events to the planet.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't even probably doesn't even feel it.
Right. Well, it may feel it. We could see the results. It's like a mosquito bite on an elephant, okay? Or in my situation, a mosquito bite on me, all right? But you feel it, and hopefully there's no result other than you see something, and the welt goes away. And what we've seen is a welt.
A welt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A welt on the surface of Jupiter, and we don't know what will happen to the welt. Will it continue for some time or what? I don't know.
Okay, now let me just take that in that same context. If something, say the size of the 2-mile piece of fragment that's supposed to hit Wednesday, let's say that hit Venus or something like that. Could any of these, in other words, is the mechanism, the solar system itself, is it so dependent upon everything else that could it do anything? Could it affect us here?
It depends on the impact. How direct was the impact? Was it straight into the ground, or was it at an acute or oblique angle of some kind, which it'll graze and spew debris out into space? We believe that there have been ancient impacts like this that have spewed debris into space. Junk. And has been captured by the Earth and other planets, et cetera, et cetera. But if it was to hit somebody like Mars, our moon, Venus, that's closer to the Earth, I don't know. It depends on what it did to the planet. Okay, that's the question. Okay.
All right. Okay. And then?
Boom.
Okay, 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009 is our number. Give us a call. My guest is Jim Moravec. He's an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. And when we come back, we've got a caller, and we will take his call, John, and then we'll continue. This is Michael Corbin, and you're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum. We'll be right back.
Colorado 80034. That's Continuum, Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado 80034. Do it now.
Pilots, when you fly, you need convenient, accurate information for safe flight and landing operations, as well as local businesses that can provide you with the services and treatment you deserve. The Skyway Publications Airport Directory and Entertainment Guides are what you need. These free pocket-sized guides give you information you need about large and small airports all over the country. Information like radio channels, runway systems, coordinates, and taxiways, as well as fuel and aircraft services provided at the airport, along with local businesses catering to private pilots. It's yours free. Ask the fixed space operator at your favorite stops to carry the Skyway Airport Directory and Entertainment Guides, or call area 303-669-1800. That's 303-669-1800. Skyway Publications, your ticket to safer, cheaper, and more convenient flight. Again, talk to the FBO at your favorite destinations, or call Skyway Publications at 303-669-1800.
Get the latest UFO news delivered right to your door with Continuum, the official quarterly publication of ParaNet Information Services. Continuum offers a serious look at the world of ufology through hard news reports and interesting and provocative interviews with leading ufologists and investigators. There's a source and resource section to help you locate information on UFOs, plus much, much more. Each issue is also packed with information from the ParaNet Information Services International Communications Network. So be informed with this comprehensive publication. Subscribe now and receive 5 issues for the price of 4. Send check or money order for $18 to Continuum, Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. That's Continuum, Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. Do it now.
You're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum. Whether or not you believe in UFOs, there's a lot about the subject you haven't heard. Stay tuned. Keep an open mind. Call in and join the discussion. Once again, here's your host, Michael Corbin.
And we continue, 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. That's our call-in number. My guest is Jim Moravec. He is an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. And let's go to a call. We've got John on line 1. Good evening, John.
Yes, hello. This is Brother John speaking.
Brother John.
Question. You sort of addressed my question, but I'll ask it anyway, and then I'll tell you why I'm asking it. I was going to ask what's the possibility of one of the larger impacts on Jupiter spewing off a fireball that could actually escape the gravitational pull of Jupiter and come to the Earth.
I guess, John, really the answer to that is we don't know.
Right.
This is all new science to us.
Well, was the fireball that came off there already now, is that gas or is that a solid, is that just regurgitating the piece of debris that came in?
From what I understand right now from the first bits of data, is that the fireball is really the ionized gas being superheated.
Okay, so that it would dissipate then.
Right, and it dissipates, but you got to understand that the gravity of Jupiter is so intense that whatever strikes it to spew anything into space, it has to be massive, really massive, and the comet isn't that massive.
Now, Brother John, if you'll allow me to maybe rephrase the question to him, and
right.
the one thing I think what he's asking too, and I think that's come up, it's a legitimate concern, what happens if one of these pieces, before it enters the atmosphere of Jupiter, ricochets in such a way that it could fly away from there? Is there a possibility that something like that could come this far and get us?
That's a very tough question to answer, simply because just for this impact alone, we had many theories, and we settled on 6 of them, okay, of which 4 were pretty much on target. But if an object were to graze Jupiter, it's got to be massive enough to have the momentum to leave, the mass, everything, all the laws of nature, to leave Jupiter itself and its gravitational pull. Jupiter is massive, and that's what caused this problem to begin with.
What, it attracted the comet?
It attracted the comet, you bet. Normally comets go around the sun, not planets. And
well, maybe it just didn't know.
It didn't know.
Maybe
no,
like that
it didn't have the briefing it should have had before it left.
Maybe like that big spot, the thing that looked like the egg.
Yes,
you know?
Right, yes. But,
Hello,
Brother
man.
John, your question as far as, I guess, results or influence or whatever on the rest of the solar system, we just don't know. As far as Jupiter is concerned, shooting ejecta outward, it did that. But the gravity pulled that ejecta, or the gaseous debris, etc., back to the surface.
The reason I'm asking is a couple of years ago there was a Carmelite nun in England who also happens to be an astronomer.
Right,
named Sister Gabrielle. And she had a vision, and she wrote a book on this in great detail, where she said she actually saw the comet hitting Jupiter. This was before it was even discovered. And a fragment coming off and striking the Earth. She said it would strike the Earth if the people on the Earth did not change their ways. This was her vision, and she wrote a very detailed book with a lot of, since she was an astronomer, she could go into the astronomical calculations that would be involved. But I just thought that's what prompted me to ask the question.
That's a legitimate question, because the possibilities always exist.
Yes.
Depending on the mass, depending on the angle of incidence in the strike.
Right.
Yeah, the possibility does exist, but we have to just wait and see.
Right. Well, it should be very interesting.
Oh, absolutely, and it really is for everybody.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. You have another wonderful program.
Thank you, Brother John.
Thank you.
Enjoy the California weather. We'll talk to you later. Okay, let's take Roger in Rockford, Illinois on WROK. Good evening, Roger.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good. You're on with my guest, Jim Moravec. He's an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. What's your question?
Okay. I stayed up late last night and watched the NASA on satellite and watched the press conference this morning. What my question is, according to everything that they talked about, these comets are in a row, one right after the other.
Yes.
Okay. They're aimed at a planet that is not only revolving, but it's also rotating around the sun. Looking at the pictures that they showed this morning, they were talking like both of the three impacts that they had were all in the same latitude, as far as in a line, impacting in a line. But what I was looking at didn't look like they were in a line horizontally. So what my curiosity was is knowing that they're impacting a moving planet, and if they're traveling in a line, what's the odds of one of them missing?
Roger, before we answer that question, could I get you to turn your radio down just a tad?
No problem.
Thank you.
Well, in answer to Roger, in answer to that question, again, most of this has been calculated mathematically. As you know, math is the language of science, and but even then, still hypotheses. You know, our math can only be as good as the mathematician or the scientist applying it, and this is so new to us that the best thing we could do, again, is just the best guess. And your observation is correct, and we are watching that as to the motion of the comet, the motion or the revolution around the sun of the giant planet Jupiter, along with its rotation around the axis. All of this has been calculated because we know their velocities, we know the speed of revolution, we know the speed of rotation, we know the speed of the comet, okay? And remember now that the planet Jupiter is also pulling on those fragments, which are in a kind of a daisy chain or a train on a track heading right smack towards that planet.
Okay. I guess probably a way I could probably rephrase it is, and I have not heard anybody address it in the conversations that I've listened to. Let's say Jupiter wasn't there and these comets were in a row. Where would they go?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I haven't had a chance to sit down and try to calculate that. If anything, it would be within a solar orbit. And they would not have broken up, we believe, simply because it was Jupiter that broke Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 up to begin with. Okay?
From the gravitational influence, right?
Right. The gravitational influence of Jupiter did that. If it had missed Jupiter altogether, was not broken up, it would be Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9, probably.
But in a solar orbit.
In a solar orbit instead of a Jupiter orbit like it did.
When you say a solar orbit, that's just like the planets rotating or going around the sun.
Right, but a very flattened circle. These comets, most of them, use a very, very flattened type of a circle or an ellipse. Okay, they get very close to the sun, and that's where we see the long, long tails, which interesting enough, can be anywhere from 50 to 80 million miles in length.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, everybody's asking questions about, fragments breaking up
Right.
and landing on the Earth,
Mhm.
hitting the Earth or whatever. So my thought was, if Jupiter wasn't there and this comet has a trajectory, where would the Earth be within its path of trajectory?
I haven't calculated that, and I haven't. Maybe somebody might have done that, but I don't know who may have done that, sir.
Because I hear a lot of comments about people saying, well, like the previous caller.
Right.
Well, that's why we
it'll,
wanted to have an astronomer on the program so that we could answer a lot of those questions. Thanks for your call, Roger. We appreciate it, and keep listening, okay? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to a break, Jim, and when we come back,
Okay.
I got a couple other questions about
All
comets,
right.
and then we'll wrap up the hour, and we'll be done.
Beautiful. Okay.
1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. My guest is Jim Moravec, astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History, and we'll be right back after this break. This is the ParaNet UFO Continuum, and I'm Michael Corbin.
ParaNet Information Services is your electronic window on the world of UFOs, accessible by computer and modem. ParaNet keeps you up to date on the world pulse of ufology with sighting reports, interesting findings, and general discussion on the mysterious UFO enigma. ParaNet features one of the most comprehensive text file libraries in the world on the paranormal, available for a small online fee. So plug into power and knowledge through ParaNet. The BBS number is available 24 hours a day. Call the data line at area 303-429-2713. That's 303-429-2713. Or for more information, contact ParaNet Information Services at area 303-429-2654. That's 303-429-2654.
There they were in aisle 6. She by the chocolate frosting, he by the jumbo straws. Their eyes met. They drew closer. She spoke. "Excuse me, do you know where the garbanzo beans are?" "Yes," he said. "Let me take you there." And they floated down the aisle. "Garbanzo beans," he said, handing them to her. "No," she said. "First, the label." He looked at her with a question in his eyes. So she told him about products that were being made from paper, plastic, metal, and glass that she'd been recycling, and how recycling keeps working only when she buys products that say made from recycled materials. Oh, how she cared for the earth, and how he cared for her. "Your number," he said. "May I call you?" She smiled. "Just call 1-800-CALL-EDF. Ask for a free brochure on buying recycled."
This message from the Ad Council, the U.S. EPA, and the Environmental Defense Fund.
Are UFOs for real, or are they just fiction? To find out, stay with us for more of the ParaNet UFO Continuum with your host, Michael Corbin.
And we continue with our guest, Jim Moravec. He's an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History. Jim, I want to ask you a question about comets now, real quick. We've only got a couple minutes to wrap this up, but we know a little bit about comets because of Halley's Comet.
Right.
And what do we know about them? What is their, what do we know about their makeup and everything? I mean, when you say a tail is 50 to 80 million miles long,
right?
How can that be?
Simply because it's a loose conglomerate, usually, of dust, ice, and gas. Simply that's really, and rock, okay?
Okay.
So that's really what comets are made of. And we know of ammonia, we know of methane and other types of gases, but the tails of the comets are caused by the solar wind itself. All right? And the solar wind is solar energy pushing on the head of the comet and causing that stream to fall away from that coma or nucleus of the comet. All right? And so the tail of a comet will always face away from the sun.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. And yes. Okay. And so we got the tail going away from the sun. Now,
right.
This is exactly what it has. The Shoemaker-Levy 9 is same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing. We have the particles, and we see tails going away, small tails going away from the particles themselves. Yes.
Okay. Now we have a guy here in Denver who called off the air. He wants to know. His question was, if Earthlings can see this, who else could too? Is there anybody out there?
Any spaceship with tourists on board out beyond Jupiter could, they have the best advantage. They could sit there and watch the impact from beyond Jupiter.
I understand that's a Pan Am flight, right?
No, Pan Algol.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, that wraps up the program for this evening, and I want to thank our guest, Jim Moravec, who's an astronomer at the Denver Museum of Natural History, and he's at the Gates Planetarium. And you had 5,000 people there last night?
We estimate anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 people. You bet.
Quite a house party.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
I guess you're going to do that again tonight, too, right?
Yes, I'm heading right back there and having a lot of fun going, ooh, ah.
Ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Yes.
One other thing, too, can you see this with your binoculars? Or
you could see the planet Jupiter with your binoculars, and you can see 4 of the Galilean moons with a good pair of binoculars. But you'll need a decent large aperture telescope, 8 inches, preferably something larger, and a good eyepiece to be able to see these impact sites.
All right, great. Well, have fun out there.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, that wraps up our program for tonight. Be sure and stay tuned to our program next Sunday night, July 24th. Our guest is going to be Richard Hoagland. He is going to talk about the Mars phase and a possible connection to the moon. Hoagland is now saying that there have been some kind of structures or artificial structures perhaps possibly being discovered on the surface of the moon. So you don't want to miss that program. It'll be next Sunday night, same time and same channel. So until then, this is Michael Corbin telling you to keep your eyes on the sky. Good night.